All of that, the leader of the Labour Party and the man who hopes to be our next Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has joined us on the sofa. Morning, Keir.
Good morning.
Morning, Keir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Keir. Keir, we have to start with what's going on in Nottingham. Valdo Kalakana, who's 32, killed 3 people in a stabbing, as you're well aware, in Nottingham in June last year. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter on grounds of diminished responsibility, and that was accepted. Now, there's obvious and understandable outrage from the families, and the Attorney General is now considering whether to refer his case to the Court of Appeal and decide whether the sentence was appropriate. You were head of the Director of Public Prosecutions. What's your take on this?
The first thing I'd say is we have to think of the families here. I heard Grace's father speaking yesterday and the day before, and it's just raw pain for these families. It's unspeakable, and we say, you know, sometimes that we can imagine what they're going through. We can't imagine what they're going through. It's absolutely awful. So far as the sentence is concerned, obviously there were mental health issues in this particular case.
And the family accept that.
And the Attorney General has got the power to review it, and I think that probably makes sense, and have it double-checked by the Court of Appeal. But I think alongside the sentence, I am very worried by what appear to be a number of points at which action could have been taken that would have prevented this happening. Yeah. And the family are saying there needs to be an inquiry into that. I think they're right about that. I think somebody outside of this, independent, needs to look at exactly what happened, what were the points at which there could have been an intervention, and why did it didn't happen. That is the least that these families are owed. Yeah. I have to say, I've seen... Obviously, I was Chief Prosecutor for 5 years. I've been a constituency MP for 8, 9 years now. And I've seen a number of these cases. I've spoken to parents who've lost, particularly, young people. Of all the things I've ever done, in politics or law, talking to a parent who's lost their child to a knife attack is the most difficult. There's almost... You can't say anything, you just have to be there.
Because you have emotion and grief and a want for justice, and you have, you know, the letter of the law. So with those, sort of balancing up those two, do you think that sentence is the right sentence?
Was it too lenient, maybe?
Well, it's very difficult when there are mental health issues in a case, because the family, the public, you know, understandably say, well, this is a case where surely it just should be a straightforward murder case with a life sentence. When it's mental health, it is more complicated. A hospital order with a restriction is a severe penalty, but I do think the family are entitled to have the review, and the Court of Appeal should look at it. But what I am worried about is that if I could sit here and say this scenario where there were points beforehand where something could have been done is unusual, that would be one thing. But I'm afraid I've seen too many times that things could have been done along the way. I was talking to Pooja last night. She is the mother of a boy, aged 16, who was killed with a samurai sword in 2022.
So if you were Prime Minister, what can you do?
Well, I think, firstly, we have to make this a #1 priority, which means the Prime Minister has to say, I'm going to have my sight on this. I think the 3 areas I would look at most are, first, the availability of knives online. These zombie-style knives are still available online. They should be banned. And the government has said, since 2015, 17 times we're going to ban them. Get on with it. I think we should add samurai swords, frankly. This case, Pooja's son was killed with a samurai sword wielded by teenage boys. They ordered it online, using his mum's identity. Then the 15-year-old went to the post office, picked up the samurai sword, and then used it within hours in this fatal attack. That cannot be allowed to happen. Yeah. The second thing I'd do is identify those young people most at risk of using a knife and take them out of the system and give them the support that they need.
Is this part of the 100 million youth programme to tackle knife?
Yeah, so mentoring, support for those children that are young people. If you look across any of these cases, you can quite often identify those that are most likely to be involved in using of knives. Get them out, give them the support, and stop that happening in the first place.
What about the 2 strikes? What about the idea that if a mandatory sentence if someone's carrying a knife, any knife?
Well, I think then the third thing is if you carry a knife, you should carry the consequences of that. I don't think that, you understand, I mean, some parents say, I think Grace's parents said, there should just be a mandatory prison sentence. Yeah. I think there needs to be more flexibility than that. But at the moment, what most worries me is there's a sort of toolkit available. I was quite shocked to see the statistic that quite a significant number of people caught with knives are simply doing letters of apology when you could have tagging, you could have curfews, you could have behaviour contracts, you could have much more muscular things before you even get to the question of what's going to happen in court. So I just don't think this is being taken seriously enough. I think that it requires leadership. I've been talking for some time about how, if we have a Labour government, I want it to be mission-driven, this sense of a driving purpose. And I would make knife crime one of my missions to drive this down, because...
I mean, what is the solution, though, Keir?
Well,
because, I mean, you see Idris Elba, he's doing so much campaigning around
Idris, I met Idris just day before last, and, again, a very powerful campaign.
Yeah.
But they're frustrated. Ben Kinsella is working, his campaign is working with. Ben was killed 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. Ben's father, listening to Grace's father in Nottingham, said, that is almost exactly what I was saying 15 years ago, and nothing has happened. We can't go on like this. And it's raw for the parents, of course it is, but it also has an impact on everybody else, because even if you're not a direct victim, you feel scared going out. I mean, I've got a 15-year-old boy and a 13-year-old
How do you feel when they go out of a night time?
I worry, of course I do. I think any parent, particularly with teenage children, worries about how safe they are on the streets. Of course they do. I'm not pleading anything special for my children. I'm just expressing the sort of concerns of the father, which any parent would share across the country. But it needs a dashboard that flashes red when these cases arise, and it needs leadership. It needs politicians who say, we're not going to talk about this anymore. We're going to make it my mission to do something about it. And that's the sort of single-mindedness that I would want to bring to this if we get the chance to do so, if we win that election. What
about stop and search? Because it's been criticised for the fact that it disproportionately, I suppose, targets ethnic minorities. What if you became Prime Minister, what would you do about that?
Look, stop and search can be really effective. And when I was in charge of prosecutions in England and Wales for 5 years, we did hundreds of thousands of cases, and stop and search was, not an insignificant number of cases started with a stop and search. But it's got to be done properly, and it's got to be intelligence-led, so there's a reason for the stop and search, and it's got to be done in a respectful way, but it is an important tool in the armoury of the police. I'd like to see a sort of dedicated knife focus here. I was in Milton Keynes with the police yesterday there, and I was really impressed with what they're doing to intervene, to stop it. They've also got these...
What are they doing?
They're doing... it's almost no-go zones, and I'm very keen on this, which is antisocial behaviour, no-go zones in towns, because everybody knows what's going on. And what Milton Keynes are doing, where they've identified one, and we, if we come into power, would have more of these no-go areas, zero-tolerance areas for antisocial behaviour, they're patrolling every 15 minutes in the time that
so
really visible, and so every 15 minutes they're back, and it's having an effect. It is an example, I think, of what you can do if you're really focused on them.
Just quite a lot to get through, so I was
sorry.
No, don't
I'm really passionate about this, because I just think we can't sit and have another discussion of this case, and we are having the same discussion over and over again. We've got to break out of this. No more sticking plasters. Let's have a mission.
But where would the police come from to do something like that? Well,
it's a priority. You have to make it a priority. But I think many people, most people, would say knife crime, it's gone up 77% since 2015. Yeah. 77% up. That's shocking under the
Most people want to see police on the streets.
They want to see it. And
even if statistically it doesn't lower crime, I think people feel safer knowing there's police on the street.
Yeah, that's why we say, if we come into government, 13,000 new neighbourhood police. These are police that work in the patch, in the area with the community, because they're the eyes and ears.
I think people want those people to be from their community quite often as well.
The eyes and ears, known in the community, that allows the police officers to pick up what's going on, who's doing what, and it allows members of the public in that area to know, right, I know my police officer.
Yeah.
Therefore, I can have a word with them if there's something going on.
Keir,
so we've got to get to that.
I want to move on to health, because obviously it's a huge concern for a lot of our listeners. A report out yesterday said obesity amongst children could end up costing the UK more than £8 billion. At the moment, obesity costs £6.5 billion a year. What would Labour do to tackle this?
Firstly, go to a preventative model for health. Our health service is on its knees. My wife works in the health service. When I say it's on its knees, she says, Keir, it's on its face. So I've got to pick it back up. And that's what a Labour government will do. But we've also got to change it. We've got to get to a model where we prevent things happening. If you take obesity and dentistry... I was at Alderhay Children's Hospital 2 weeks ago. It's the most amazing place. I was in the ward where they were doing open heart surgery on babies. It's awe-inspiring. But what is shocking is more children are admitted to Alderhay Hospital to have their teeth taken out because they're decaying between the ages of 6 to 11 than anything else, because we're not getting in early with prevention.
Yeah.
Same with obesity. Now, some people push back and say, well, you shouldn't be telling people what they should be eating. We were saying supervised toothbrushing at school for young children. There's a great pushback. You cannot have these brilliant staff at Alderhay Hospital dealing with obesity and taking children's teeth out because we've got a model which isn't about prevention and we're simply saying, the state should have nothing to do with it. I just don't agree with that.
Do you see a more joined-up thinking in terms of getting people out of hospital beds and into sort of social care if needs be? And just it seems to be that the backlog in people leaving hospital is huge as well, which then prevents people coming in through the front door.
I think it's the front door and the back door. The front door problem is either people can't get a GP appointment and therefore they turn up at A&E, or it's just straight route from GP to A&E.
So
we need something more community-based.
What
health.
specifically what?
A mental health hub, for example, in the community. We want mental health professionals in hubs in every community. In a walk-in, where you can walk in, you don't have to go via a GP. You can go straight in and be seen for mental health issues. That is much better for the individual, desperately needed, and then it doesn't mean that those individuals are turning up at A&E, which is massively overstretched. So we've got to do some original thinking here, because the pressure on the health service is just unbearable under this government.
Yeah, it is. And what about junior doctors? Will you pay them more money so that the striking stops and things like that?
Well, quite frankly, with junior doctors, the government and the junior doctors need to get in the room and sort this out. Both of them are hinting that there's a deal to be done.
Yeah.
Junior doctors have got, they've been... this is the same for all NHS staff. They've been, underpaid and undervalued for years and working under incredible strain. We have to recognise that. A government, therefore, has to get in the room, negotiate a deal with them. And this dancing around, well, we won't go in the room first until you say this. Get on with it, get in the room. When we had the last Labour government, we didn't have these sorts of strikes.
Do you see that, if you are elected, do you see that as a kind of across the board? Because, we do this show so much and we hear that unions and companies don't sit down, and it feels like it's quite often government a bit hands-off about it. And I think most of our viewers just thought, well, we want our politicians to get your hands dirty, go in there, mediate and make sure there's resolution, whether it's health or transport.
Of course. That's how... Outside of politics, that's how most people, most businesses run their lives, which is there's no business that doesn't encounter a problem, a challenge along the way. What you do is identify the problem, get in the room, sort it out. In politics, too much... I mean, I've come into politics late in life, so it's, a lot of this is odd, having come from working, as a lawyer in Northern Ireland, in the public service. In politics, too many people think that shouting about a problem is better than solving a problem.
Yeah.
I completely disagree. Get in the room, sort it out. Of course, there are differences of opinion. Get in, organise it and get done. And get back, because, 7.7 million people on the waiting list?
Yeah.
This is intolerable under this government.
Keir, can we talk about immigration? And you have been accused of not having a clear plan with regards to stopping the boats. What is your plan for the
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade. Nobody should be making that channel, crossing the channel in these boats. Gangs are running this. They're taking a huge amount of money from very vulnerable people. They are now, the boats they're using, if you look at them, they're bigger than normal. They're being made to order. They're being stored in Europe.
Is that
they're
about
being
more
taken to the
cooperation?
northern coast of France.
I was going to say, is that about more cooperation with the French government?
Well, with all of the countries that are involved in the areas where these boats are being made and pulled across. But look, when I was Director of Public Prosecutions, we obviously had to deal with terrorist plots. We had to deal with those that were running drugs and guns, and all these plots are cross-border. And we did joint work with law enforcement in other countries to take these gangs down, share the intelligence, share the thinking, share the evidence, and agree where are you going to intercept this gang. If it can be done for terrorism, for gun running, for drug running, I do not and will never accept the argument that it can't be done to take down these gangs that are running this vile trade. So rather than a gimmick about Rwanda, what do you do when people have already got here? How about smashing the model that's getting them here in the first place? I will never... People say to me, it can't be done. We took down terrorist gangs. I'm sorry. With the political will, this can be done. And if I were Prime Minister, that's where I'd be putting my energy, not a gimmick with Rwanda. I'd be working with others to say, let's stop this at the point of source here, smash these gangs. These people should be in jail.
Listen, you are, at the moment, doing very well in the polls. So there's a fair chance you could be next Prime Minister. Are you and your family ready for this?
I'm never letting you near my shadow cabinet because every week I have to say to them, ignore the polls, fight like we're 5 points behind. But obviously, this is election year. This is the year we've been waiting for, working for. And, Vic and I, we take one step at a time. We cross each bridge as we get to.
Because you're a dad, right? So
But
you've got that to consider.
Almost nothing daunts me about the job I've got to do. The thing that worries me is our kids. My boy is 15, he's going on 16, doing his GCSEs. Teenagers, he's a fantastic boy. Our girl is 13, going on 16. And so they're at an age where what I do impacts them almost more than any other age. If they were, under 5 or something, I don't think they would be so impacted. So I'm worried about that. They like doing their own thing.
Have you had that conversation with them? Because there's, in some way, shape or form, they'll be in the public eye. You can be as private as you can. So how do they... I mean, I'm not going to ask you personally.
Are they going to move into number 10?
So our 13-year-old girl, this must have been about 6 or 9 months ago now, said to me one evening, she said, Daddy, if you do win the election, are you going to move into Downing Street? So I said, Mum and I would take each step as we go, da-da-da. Then deadpan, matter of fact, she looks at me and she says, just to let you know, I'm not coming.
Wow, that is it.
And what she's going to do...
Done.
Where's she going?
She's got her mates.
No, she ain't going there.
She's got her mates in Kentish Town and she's not moving.
And
so
lastly...
I'm not quite sure what we're going to do about that, but we'll have to see.
Lastly, so it's just as sort of questions politics as a whole. In many ways, I think as a population, as a society, we're so engaged in politics, and yet I don't think we've ever been as distrustful of politicians, irrespective of who they are, as we are now. So how do you think we can turn that round?
Yeah, how do you
and actually
build
get trust in our politicians again?
Well, firstly, we've got to do it.
And I don't mean that as a party political thing. I just mean across the board.
No, I think you've identified probably the single biggest problem in politics at the moment, which is when we say we want to rebuild the NHS and make it fit for the next 75 years, people don't say, I don't like that. What they do say is either things are so broken now after 14 years of this government, I don't think it's possible, a sort of defeatism, or they say, we've heard it all before.
Well, they say you're all the same.
Yeah.
So how do you convince them you're not all the same?
Well, we have to come in, we have to explain what we're going to do, be mission-driven on it, and in the end, it's the actions that we take that will persuade people.
So true.
But that's so hard. Politics is the art of the compromise. So you can come in with grand plans, but if you have to compromise, you understand why people then go, yeah, but you stood up for your word and so forth. Do you know what I mean?
That's why I want a mission-driven Labour government that says these are the 5 things that matter most, and we're going to be sort of absolutely single-minded in achieving them. We need a reset moment. And one of the things I want to try and achieve, if we get the chance, is to restore the idea that politics is about service. It's about serving the public. Because it's now, I think, under this government, it's gone into this place of self-enrichment, self-enhancement. We've got people resigning from Parliament because they weren't given a peerage. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What is that about? So I hope, if we can get it over the line at the election, and we've got to earn every vote, I hope it can be a reset moment.
Just last
where we can say politics is about service.
Why do you want to do this? Because you had a good career as a lawyer. It's not like you're going to get a better career off the back of being Prime Minister, because you could have just...
Made good money.
Right.
So when I finished as...
He was on good dollar already, I tell you.
When
Why
I finished as Director of Public Prosecutions, Vic, my wife, was sort of ringing adverts for sort of, other jobs in the legal sphere which would have paid a lot of money. One of my best friends said almost exactly what you've just said to me, which is, why the hell would you want to do this? The answer is this driving sense that we can change things, the lives for people. We need hope, we need change, I've always had this drive to improve the lives of other people, take our country forward. And for me, going from a lawyer to Northern Ireland to running the Crown Prosecution Service, there was always a frustration that there were limits of what I could do unless I got into government.
Yeah.
So, you could try and use the laws, but in the end, only in Parliament can you actually get hold of the levers to change lives in the country for the better.
Keir Starmer, thank you
good
so
luck.
much. And up the Gunners. Thank you. Thank you, Keir.